Thank you for joining my podcast again today. My name is Dotsun Oyawoye, and it's just been a pleasure, bringing those tiny thoughts from scriptures and life your way. I've been talking to ministers, young ministers a lot, and I'm going to do some other quick conversations for young ministers. Today, I like to give some quick tips to a young minister who is starting a church. And permit me to say that it is not that difficult. When you look through the Acts of the Apostles and the epistles, you find interesting people who started churches. Timothy, we believe Timothy was just about 17. Yes, his father Paul might have started it, but eventually was lead pastor of that church at a very young age. Now, just to say to you that it's not such a big thing. You can, and just to give some quick tips on what it means and what you need to do to start a church. I'll need to say this first of all, that it seemed to me that one of the very, very, very important strategies in the heart of God to have the gospel spread across the world is through church planting. And every believer must be committed to planting churches. Whether you will plant as one who is leading the church, or you will plant along with other people in support, whether there will be churches that are offshoots of existing churches, like you are in a denomination starting one of the branches or expressions or campuses, or you're starting something absolutely new. So I thought to mention that God is still interested in church planting, and there will still be more churches because we've not taken the entirety of the universe, of the world yet. There's still more ground to cover. Number two, please, I'd like you to note that there are still new expressions of church life that still needs to show up on the face of the earth for us to gather everybody and get them saved. There are cultures still, as at today, that we've still not been able to penetrate because we've not planted churches that look like them, churches with which we can ensure that we take our sickle to the field and harvest a whole lot of people. So just to mention those two things, that God is interested in church planting, and church planting is strategic for world evangelism. But here you are, you're a young person. I lead some young people, for instance, and some of them have to plant churches at a very young age. We're somewhere sometime, some years ago, and I sat on the table with a 16-year-old who was preparing to plant a church. I felt humbled because I was at least more than 20 years older than this lady at that point. But she was in the process of planting a church. So it could be anybody, right? But I'm talking to younger ministers, whoever it is that this will be useful for. Some things I've learned in the church planting process is, first of all, be clear that God is calling you to plant a church. Now, and planting a church could be, like I had mentioned, could be an offshoot of another church. For instance, you serve in a ministry, you're planting your campuses, or you are just starting a fresh, what we call independent work, really. Be sure God is calling you to. If you're a believer, God is certainly calling you to be part of a church planting process. In fact, every believer should think about planting a church, whether it's a small community of believers that we call missional communities, or you want to, whatever it is. We're all called to do some work in the process of planting churches. But you are led to pioneer a particular church. Be double sure you are led. And being sure is not difficult. It's just seeking the Lord in prayer and knowing that God has sent you to do so. The second thing is, you must also find out, for that season or in your life, who are the people God has sent me to. I'm not saying who do you want to go to. I'm saying who has the Lord sent you to. For instance, I was talking to a young man some time ago, and he was talking to me about how left to him there were these kinds of people he wanted to reach out to, but the Lord kept putting his heart in another set of people. Now, the people the Lord was laying on his heart were people he had some prejudices against. Like Jonah was angry with Nineveh, and God sent him to Nineveh. It's not impossible that God is drawing your heart in the direction of something or some group of people that you might not even be familiar with. But be sure they are the persons the Lord has sent you to. Right? The third reason is that you must ensure that you are planting a church for a good reason. Young people sometimes plant churches for interesting reasons. Sometimes we plant churches to prove a point. You just want to show either the mother church or your pastor that there's a better way to do it. Someone said this to me some time ago. He said, I'm soon going to leave that church and plant a new church within the same denomination. He said, and that church will grow. I want to show our pastor that what I've been suggesting to him all the while, there are things he should have done for our church to grow when he begins to see it work in my own ministry. And he just never took off because he already had the wrong reason. He just wanted to prove a point. Sometimes we want to plant churches for the optics, for the razzmatazz. You think, now I'm lead pastor. I've been associate pastor. Now I'm lead pastor. You love that hair. You love that. The truth of the matter is that when you lead a church, you are the biggest servant. If someone is in trouble at 1 a.m. and they call their doctor and the doctor does not pick up, and they call their uncle and their uncle does not pick up, and then they call you and you don't pick up, they will not be angry with those two. They will be angry with you. That you see, pastor, that we were calling, when do we need pastor if not during an emergency? I was saying jokingly during the COVID lockdown, this is a joke, but there's a part of me that means it. They said that they were given. I had to drive out one day, really on an emergency, and they said, oh no, I was not allowed to drive because they only allowed essential workers and people who have to be first responders to emergency to cover. And I said, who told you I am not an essential worker? Because sometimes you are called in at interesting times of the day to do this, to do that, and you would have to because it's part of your call. So you can't just start just because you want the office, you want people pulled over and all of that. The truth is, when you are pastoring a church, you're serving the people. Another interesting reason I found people, plant churches is simply out of offense. You've been offended somewhere and you just take your bag and say, I'm going to do this. I can do this on my own anyway. I'm not saying everyone who has planted church out of offense were not meant to plant those churches. No, I don't think so. I think sometimes the motivation is just wrong at that point. And that's why I say to young people, if you're offended by something going on in the ministry you have right now, resolve it to as much as you can before you step out to start yours, because what you sow at some point in time, at some measure or the other, you will also reap. So make sure you are planting the church for the good reason. Number 4, spend time in prayer. There are 3 levels of prayers that are very necessary when anyone is starting a church, whether you're starting as an expression of one or you are starting brand new, is that the pastor must spend time in personal prayers. Personal prayers. Praying for himself, praying for insight, praying for everything pray as if everything depends on it, right? That's the first level. The second level, which I'm going to share about these people in a short while, is when you have a launch team, instead of people who will do this work for you, you also spend time praying with them. Please note this. Don't start selecting a launch team except you have spent time in prayer yourself. Let the Lord begin to lay people on your heart. Now, sometimes, in fact, you need to just believe God. God picks you up now and throws you several miles into a new place. You don't know anybody and you're meant to start a church there. You will pray and pray for the Lord to bring the people. And as He begins to bring them, you begin to set up a launch team and begin to get them to pray also. Now, the third level of prayer is, as soon as this has started, make sure the congregation, no matter how small, right, are engaged in prayer. Because church planting is warfare. That's the truth. I know there's a lot of strategies, but it is warfare. You need to take over the field, take over the ground, prepare the people so you can start on a good note. So get ready and start in prayer. The next point. I have learned that if you are going to start anything, make sure the vision is clear. The vision must be clear to you, must be clear to the people who you are leading also. So if you are starting as an expression of another ministry, make sure the mission of that ministry is clear to you and you're able to follow through with the things they do the way they do it. Now, I believe if I agree to start a franchise for you. For instance, you have a fast food, a chain of fast food joints, and I take your franchise to start one with your name. I must do everything to look like that. There are many of them in our country that if you eat if you eat a particular delicacy, you eat fried rice from outlet A, C, and Z, they all taste alike. You notice they are dressed alike. You notice the ambience is the same. It's not the same place, but everything is the same because they have not only imbibed vision, they've also learned the culture. So when understanding the vision makes you bring the culture to the ground and allows you help people to come into the culture. It will not be proper for someone to look at your church that you are planting as an expression of another church and you don't look like where you're coming from. In fact, you must, in terms of culture, be basically the same. You can have excellence at a whole new level. Do you understand me there? So learn the culture, make sure you learn it well, and all of that. Now, this is crucial. Take one day at a time. Church planting is a long journey. There are churches in our nation, Nigeria, that are hundreds, maybe 100 or so years old, right? And they've been there for many years and they are still evolving. Note that you can't become your mother church, right? Permit me to use that term, your mother church in 1 year. You can't suddenly become everything. Take your time. Know that you're in a growth process, right? Do the things that is possible, do the things that your resources can handle, and grow into it. There's so much beauty in the local church, especially when it's startup. You can do a whole lot, but make sure you're not under pressure to quickly become like where you're coming from or what you have seen. I've seen many pastors who have been under immense pressure because they are coming from a ministry that's been there 20, 25 years. They've had structures running. They have the resources to have the equipment, the media equipment, the sound equipment, everything is there. And then they have the people who have been trained, who know how to stand as proper ushers, who know how to be good protocol officers, who know the things to do. Now you're starting something new and you don't see those things and you are frustrated. Some go to extreme extent to just ensure they're able to replicate the things they have. Take it one day at a time. One day you would also, if you are still in that church, pastor in that church, you'll also be at the same level or even if not better than the church that you are coming from. I'll take this further in my next podcast because then I'm going to talk about gathering resources and managing the resources for a new church plant. Thank you so much for being part of this today once again. Now, subscribe, share, invite people. Whatever you see here that has been useful to you, share with other people. Now, on all of my platforms, you have room to send in comments, to send in suggestions. Please, this is open. Maybe we'll give room for other kinds of forum, other times where we can take a lot of feedbacks and maybe take this further. But don't forget, the essence of this is to help men make success of life and eternity by the teaching of God's word and indeed by the manifestations of the Spirit. Thank you for joining. I believe this has been useful. God bless you and see you next time.